The Russian opposition activist Alexei Navalny has landed back in Moscow, but at a different airport to bypass his supporters. They gathered at Vnukovo airport to greet him. Several were detained. However, the flight was diverted towards another international airport in Moscow. 2 female Supreme Court judges have been shot dead in a fresh blow to security in Afghanistan. The latest attack comes days after the Pentagon announced it had cut American troop levels in Afghanistan. Thousands of National Guard troops have been deployed in Washington ahead of Wednesday's inauguration ceremony. The FBI has warned police across the US that the threat of violence remains high. One of the most influential pop music producers of the 1960s, Phil Spector, has died while serving a murder sentence. He was 81.
The U.S. House of Representatives voted to impeach President Donald Trump for the second time Wednesday on charges of inciting the attack on the U.S. Capitol last week. Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen thanks the United States for its support in a call to the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. China criticized the move. Ugandans vote in a presidential election in which opposition candidate Bobi Wine and 9 others face longtime President Yoweri Museveni. And an international team of experts arrives in Wuhan, China, to investigate the beginnings of the coronavirus pandemic.
Stocks ended the day lower and lost ground for the week. The Dow Jones Industrials fell 177 points to close at 30,814. The Nasdaq Composite lost 114 points. The S&P 500 fell 27. For the week, both the Nasdaq and S&P dropped 1.5%. The Dow lost nearly 1%. Markets fell after President-elect Joe Biden unveiled his $1.9 trillion COVID relief plan late Thursday. One stock analyst said investors weren't really thrown off by the package, having expected a large number. And the latest government data suggests a slowing economic recovery. Retail sales fell 0.7% in December, the third straight monthly decline. Shares of J.P. Morgan Chase, Wells Fargo, and Citigroup all fell Friday. The banks reported better than expected quarterly profits, but also declining revenue. And ExxonMobil stock fell 4.8%. We report that the Securities and Exchange Commission launched an investigation into the energy giant after an employee filed a whistleblower complaint last fall. A quick programming note: we'll be off Monday for the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday. We'll be back on Tuesday.
We start here in Japan, where health authorities reported 5,759 coronavirus new cases across the country on Sunday. A record 972 people are in serious condition. The Tokyo Metropolitan Government says it confirmed 1,592 new cases. Tokyo and the 3 neighboring prefectures of Kanagawa, Chiba, and Saitama all reported their highest figures for a Sunday. This was the first weekend since the state of emergency was extended from the greater Tokyo area to cover 11 prefectures in total. The latest analysis shows far more people were out and about in many places across Japan on Saturday than during the first state of emergency. Crowds were more than 7 times larger in some spots. The minister in charge of the coronavirus response said on an NHK program on Sunday that the government is urging people to stay at home. Companies are also being asked to reduce commuting by 70%.
I am asking everyone to pull together and comply with infection control measures so the state of emergency will not have to be prolonged.
The head of the Japan Medical Association says there has been another surge in the number of young patients and people should be on their guard.
It's becoming clear that younger people are also susceptible to the after effects of the virus, such as damage to internal organs.
The health ministry has announced a plan to expand testing. Antigen tests are simpler and faster than PCR tests, but they were also believed to be less accurate and were only given to people with symptoms. Officials now say as long as there is sufficient virus present, there is no significant difference in the accuracy of the 2 types of tests. Staff, patients, and elderly residents will be given the antigen tests at medical institutions and care homes. PCR tests will be used to confirm any positive results. The officials say regular mass testing at such facilities will detect carriers sooner and prevent cluster infections. Japanese health authorities are planning to set up a system to track foreign nationals who tested positive for the coronavirus after they enter the country. The health ministry has been using a system called HOSHIS to monitor the nation's coronavirus situation in real time. It was launched in May last year. But the system is separate from the database on foreign nationals whose names and nationalities are registered at quarantine stations after they enter the country. The ministry is working to link the two systems using passport numbers. That should help health authorities across the country quickly share information. Officials plan to get the two systems connected later this month. The state of emergency in Japan is undercutting sales of food, and that's forcing wholesalers to get rid of products they can't sell. One wholesaler is getting far fewer orders from bars and canteens because of reduced operating hours and more working from home. The company is using smaller trucks that carry less cargo, but the labor and fuel costs are becoming a strain. Frozen seafood and cut vegetables, soon to be discarded, are piled up at the company's warehouse.
We ask restaurants to absorb as much food inventory as possible, such as by asking them to add new menu items as the expiry date approaches. But it requires a huge amount of work to encourage this process.
The company sometimes donates food to social support organizations before it expires, but in most cases, it has no choice but to dispose of it. It says the costs to do that are high. Some of the players who have arrived for the Australian Open tennis tournament in Melbourne next month are complaining about unfair COVID-19 restrictions. That's after other people on their flights tested positive. Tournament organizers say 3 people on chartered flights from the United States and the United Arab Emirates were confirmed to be infected. The organizers have imposed stricter quarantine measures on 47 players who are on the flights. These players won't be allowed to practice outside during their 2-week hotel quarantine. Some have raised objections to the ban on practicing. Players who arrived on other flights can still practice outside for up to 5 hours a day, even under quarantine. Swiss player Belinda Bencic tweeted that these are unequal practice conditions before an important tournament. Despite the frustration, organizers say the tournament will start as scheduled.
The Australian Open is going ahead, and we'll continue to do the best we can possibly do to ensure those players have what is not a great situation, one that is somewhat acceptable.
The organizers say the affected players are getting some help, with exercise equipment being provided to their rooms. "77 people have been confirmed dead after a 6.2 magnitude earthquake shook the Indonesian province of West Sulawesi on Friday. Authorities say at least 743 people were injured. Rescue workers in Majene and the provincial capital of Mamuju are rushing to find people before the crucial 72-hour survival period ends early on Monday. After that point, chances of finding people alive are said to fall sharply. Rescue dogs are being used to search for people trapped under collapsed buildings, but a shortage of heavy equipment is reportedly hindering the operation. The arrival of machinery from other areas has been delayed as roads have been heavily damaged. Indonesia has the highest numbers of coronavirus cases and deaths in Southeast Asia. The critical challenges are preventing infection among the nearly 28,000 evacuees, along with securing enough food supplies. Local authorities and the health ministry are set to distribute about 70,000 masks. They've also moved people at high risk of developing serious symptoms to prevent the spread of the virus. Joe Biden is set to be sworn in as the 46th president of the United States in just a few days. Tension is running high as the country prepares for an unprecedented inauguration ceremony. The perimeter of the Capitol has been cordoned off ahead of the ceremony on Wednesday. Vehicle access to the center of the Capitol has been restricted. Authorities say up to 25,000 National Guard troops will be mobilized. The parade has been canceled due to the coronavirus, and the square in front of the Capitol, where the new president takes the oath of office, has been closed for security reasons. Authorities are warning of possible disturbances after supporters of President Donald Trump stormed the Capitol building on January 6th to protest Biden's victory. States of emergency have been declared in Washington and neighboring states. Governors across the nation are also preparing by calling up National Guard troops. The Federal Bureau of Investigation warns there is a great deal of concerning chatter online, including calls for armed protests. Social media companies have been regulating posts that incite violence. Nearly 5.8 million chickens have been culled in Japan this season due to bird flu. The record number is expected to top 6 million when the ongoing cull is completed. A highly pathogenic strain of bird flu virus has been detected since last November in 15 prefectures across Japan. On-site investigations by government experts have found cases where farms were not complying with hygiene management guidelines. Experts say the virus carried by wild birds may be transmitted by wild animals, people, and vehicles. The Agriculture Ministry is calling on farmers to report even small irregularities. Chickens infected with this season's virus take a long time to die and may transmit the sickness to others. Hokkaido University professor Sakoda Yoshihiro is calling on farmers to review the basics of hygiene control and thoroughly implement preventive measures. Those were the stories for this hour.
The Trump administration, and a key question, is the president ready for his impeachment trial? Rudy Giuliani telling ABC News he will help with President Trump's defense. Help the White House has yet to confirm. Here's ABC's White House correspondent Rachel Scott.
Tonight, with less than 72 hours left in his term, President Trump is isolated, his second impeachment trial looming. Spotted at the White House this weekend, his personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani. Sources say the president has recently grown irritated with Giuliani, but he's one of the few allies the president has left. Giuliani telling our Jonathan Karl he is part of the president's defense team. But the White House has still not confirmed who will serve as the president's counsel, even though the trial could begin in days. Giuliani, who led the president's failed charge to overturn the election, telling ABC News he is open to having the president testify. He also addressed the crowd on January 6th.
Let's have trial by combat.
The prosecution says they'll be ready whenever the article of impeachment is handed over to the Senate.
We're preparing as though we're going to go in the next hour.
The senators who witnessed that deadly Capitol Hill riot will serve as jurors.
This was the most serious presidential crime in the history of the United States of America, the most dangerous crime by a president ever committed against the United States.
Democrats say they plan to go after every single vote. It would take at least 17 Republicans to convict Trump. Some Republicans, though, are concerned Giuliani's involvement could hurt the president.
If it's Rudy Giuliani's defense, I think it raises the likelihood of more than 17 Republicans voting for conviction.
Let's get right to Rachel Scott on that point at the White House tonight. And Rachel, Rudy Giuliani also leaving open the possibility that the president may still try to pardon himself before he leaves office.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Tom. And we know that is something that the president has suggested to his closest advisors, something that they have advised against. We have not seen that before. And tonight, our latest ABC News Washington Post poll says 68% of Americans are opposed to the president granting himself that pardon, Tom.
Rachel Scott for us at the White House tonight. Rachel, thank you for that.